Welcome to Lifestyle Solopreneur, the community for entrepreneurs who put lifestyle first. Join your host Flavia Barris as she interviews successful lifestyle solopreneurs and shares ideas to help you find the perfect balance between lifestyle, business, and self. Flavia is an attorney, marketing expert, and founder of several online academies. She's been featured in major media including BBC World News, The Wall Street Journal, The New York Post, ESPN Television, and more. Join us for this episode of Lifestyle Solopreneur. Hey, Lifestyle Solopreneurs. Today we have the privilege of talking to Harrison Barron. He's been growing online communities for several years now. He has built an impressive following through various media outlets and wants to share his expertise with any entrepreneur who needs help. His passions have led him to want to help to encourage others to pursue theirs. He is well-versed in social media platforms, podcasting, YouTube, and so much more. And his current project is Growth Generators. Welcome to the show, Harrison.
Hey, thanks for having me, Flavia.
So great to have you. And so tell us a little bit about your journey. So when you tell someone, hey, I have this project called Growth Generators, I've been growing online communities, what does that really mean? What does your day-to-day job look like right now?
Every day is different. So Growth Generators is the new company name. We just rebranded. We're in the process of rebranding, I should say, from the old name, which was Barron Media Group. Obviously, something I founded. And then something that kind of hit me in the middle of, because I just like probably almost every other entrepreneur out there was like, I'm going to go start a company, but I don't know a company name. I barely even know what I'm going to go do, but all I know is I'm really unhappy at my day job. And that covers a multitude of reasons. So I named it Barron Media Group. And then it was like, if I ever want to sell this, it is going to be so hard to sell with my name in it. And the other thing too, is that I started realizing just more recently, and why we really rebranded, was people were asking for me. And I want to be able to actually remove myself from the equation completely at some point down the road. Even if I don't choose to sell it and I plan on holding it, I don't want people to get in the habit of being like, oh, this is Harrison's company, let me call Harrison. I want them to be able to go and say, oh, okay, I need the help of Growth Generators to go build my brand online, build my online communities, really get the exposure that we want. So that's the new name. And that's kind of what we do. We really just help people build communities and followings online so they can grow their business.
Amazing. And what kinds of communities do you find that your clientele has? I mean, is it particular niche or theme, or is it truly everything and anything?
It really varies tremendously. So typically a company will come to us and they say, hey, we have no following. We have no visitors on our website. We're really not in the position that we want to be in for growing our business and things like that. So from there, we typically come up with a strategy. We used to focus a lot on social media. Problem with social media, for anybody listening, if you're trying to grow your business on social media, it is like pounding your head against the wall. And the reason is because social media is an instantaneous thing, right? Like Instagram is probably the biggest giveaway for it, right? It's instant. So after 24 to 48 hours, that post is dead. Nobody's going back looking at those posts unless you're running for president, right? That's the only time that people are going to dig up information. Other than that, that's it. So we typically will help people write really good content. We may fire up a Facebook group so that way, depending on what kind of business they're in, they could join that Facebook group. And then from there, we just really start to grow that reach to get in front of more and more people over time.
Now, share with me, and it doesn't have to be like your top client, but what's one case study that you just like to talk about? Like one client case, and if you don't have permission from a client to talk about a particular client's account, maybe change it around a little bit so that it's anonymous, but something kind of fun.
Yeah, so we definitely strive for one thing, and we try to make all of our clients case studies, not to make everybody sound like they're a science experiment, but it's really cool to see the impacts that we have. So when everything from email marketing to getting found online to building a Facebook group is something that we really enjoy getting involved in. So for example, if I say, hey, we help with email marketing, right? Email marketing is great. And if you really can build a community around your email marketing and say like, hey, people are really interested in not only what you're doing, but your company is doing and things like that, they're willing to buy at an exponential rate. So what we did was we went into one of these companies and he was already sending email marketing, but they sold a product. They were on, I'll use a little bit of generic, but also a little bit of detail. They were on Shark Tank. So they already had a massive amount of exposure. Spoiler alert, they didn't get a deal, but it was really cool. So he had an email capture on his website and it wasn't doing as good as we really wanted to, or he really wanted it to, but it was something, right? So 17,000 emails later in his email capture, he made about $50,000 that was directly correlated to that email capture. Now, some of you might be thinking, well, that's a lot of money. me going in there, I was like, this could be drastically improved. We should be able to make so much more money than this. So after we did some A/B testing and things like that, we ended up converting. We ran it, and we had about 6,000 people go through it. And out of those 6,000 people, 5,000 to 6,000, we had $70,000 in sales. So it's about a 300% increase. And the cool part is when we started to look at the data, the people that actually had refunded went down because they really enjoyed not only the product, but the email sequences that followed, and they were way more engaging than what was already there. And they became raving fans, which is what we love to do. We have another case where they were like, hey, we have this product. We want to sell this product online. We don't really know how to get in front of our ideal target audience and things like that. So what do? We ended up firing up some social media accounts for them. We also created a bunch of content on their website, which drove traffic to not only their products, but their social media accounts. And we enticed people that were purchasing to send in photos of their products and their products that they bought and how they were using them. So in this case, it was car products. And ultimately, those people not only became raving fans, but they actually stopped buying other brands, which was really, really cool. And they ended up increasing their revenue. I actually don't know how much they increased their revenue, but the support and that between chats and DMs and all that kind of stuff skyrocketed, which was really, really cool. So we have a ton of different case studies in that regard, but those are some that like really kind of stand out to us.
Oh, for sure. Those are great stories. And then also, those are like great stories, things that went well. Tell us about some common mistakes that you see people out there making that when you see them, it's a little bit of a facepalm for you because you're so in the industry and clearly a leader in the industry, but you see entrepreneurs doing certain things out there that you're just like, no, come to me, learn more.
I see it all day, every day.
So, and this might be enlightening because some of us listening might go, oops, ouch, I do that. So lay it on us. What are the mistakes that people are making?
So the first thing is you need to create more than you consume. Any company that is really growing is creating more than they're consuming. So that could be solopreneurs, right? I'm a huge fan of the solopreneur community. I was one for a very long time until more recently. But what I did was I did exactly the social media thing. I was so focused on like, oh, let me make posts. And I realized that the posts didn't move the needle at all. And the hard part that's really difficult to get over is my friends and family were like, hey, really love the content you're putting out. Well, guess who's never going to buy my stuff, right? Guess who's never going to hire me for their SEO or online building communities and really kind of what I like to term inbound marketing? Those people will never buy from me. And it's not frustrating because you think that you're doing something right, but in reality, you're actually doing nothing to grow your business. And the hard part is like, you might make an Instagram post, right? That might actually solve somebody's problems. But once again, it's a very short-lived thing where it's never going to work for you anymore. And that's something that a lot of people don't actually realize is like, that content only works for you for a very short period of time. People are so worried about their websites, right? They think like, oh my God, I need the greatest website since sliced bread, right? We go in and we actually look at some of our competitors who might be partners in certain industries. So we're a partner with Webflow, and Webflow is a online building tool, kind of like Wix. It's kind of more difficult to use, but you can do a lot more on it. And I started looking at some of the top designers on there, and the websites that they were producing were masterpieces. And the website it was like somebody carved the David, right? And it was just these incredibly beautiful websites. But the funny part is when I actually went to their work, I couldn't figure out what the company did because the website was so impressive that it actually removed me from. I spent like 10 minutes on somebody's website and had no idea what they did. And the designer was so focused on like this really jaw-dropping website, couldn't figure out me as a consumer now. Now, am I going to buy those products? Probably not. But a consumer going to those websites, I couldn't figure out not only what they did, but if I wanted to contact them, it was so much going on and all of these different things. It was information overload and design overload. And here's the thing. Nobody's ever bought a product because the website looks good. People buy products because what they talk about are their services or their product that they're producing is good, not because the website looks good. So spending time on creating content online and actually having an active blog where you're providing really good value for people is going to go light years further than spending time on social media, right? Or spending time on building the nicest website you could build for your own. So this is solopreneurs. Most solopreneurs are going to build their own website. Stop focusing on how good the website looks and start creating content that's going to add tremendous value to your ideal customer. Because when you do that over and over and over again, and that ideal customer figures out that you're the expert in that area, that's when you're going to have massive success and massive growth in your business.
Boom, truth bomb. That's Fantastic. I mean, that's a great thing to remind everyone of is it's not all about appearances when you're doing business. I mean, it's great to have a good looking brand identity. And obviously you want to have a web presence and you want it to not look like it was designed in 1990. And I'm not knocking the 90s. I loved the 90s, but there is a certain look that we've evolved past. And I get it. Yeah. Sometimes I go to a website with a specific function that I need to access, like, hey, this restaurant, I want to see their menu. And I'll get to their website and it's kind of hidden. Like all of the things that you think which should be readily available for a visitor of the site are hard to get to. Contact page, that kind of thing. So really kind of the user experience on a website is so important. And I think it's hilarious that you saw works of art websites that were, unless you're running an art gallery, really, you should not be so focused on the aesthetics of your site that you forget to make it functional.
Yeah. And it's so funny because like I have a good friend of mine. I'm not gonna throw him under the bus, but he's like, I'm really not converting anybody on my website. And then I was like, well, what do you mean? He's like, well, I put all this time and energy into building a website. And then I run like a quick SEO scan on it. And I'm like, you're not getting people to convert on your website because you're not getting any traffic. You've spent so much time and energy and effort in like making sure your website looks really, really good, but nobody's even coming. And I see it all the time. Like people are so worried about like their image, and these branding experts, I use air quotes because I've never seen somebody go buy something because of the brand, right? With the exception of, yes, there are obviously designer brands, but the vast majority of people, if you really think about it, what does an L and a V stand for? We know it as Louis Vuitton because of the branding after the company was already established. But if you look at like a check mark, nobody just thinks, oh my God, like I need to buy whatever has a check mark on it. No, you know that at this point it stands for Nike, right? They've spent trillions of dollars in advertising. Same thing with if I said, hey, let's look at a silhouette of an apple with a bite taken out of it, you'd be like, oh, that's kind of interesting, right? But now we know that that's directly tied to Apple, right? Branding comes after, not beforehand. You need to get traffic and visitors to your website who may be interested in buying long before you're worried about like, do I have the right logo? Do I, well, nobody's buying my stuff. Well, does anybody even care to see what you're doing, right? Like anybody could fire up a website. It's the people that take time to drive traffic to it, to reach their target audience. Those are the ones that succeed online.
So diving deeper into this branding and naming concept, you mentioned something earlier. You said you had originally named your company after yourself, but now you are expanding or rebranding, even going in a different direction and establishing more of a brand independent from your personal identity. And I think this is an area where you can have a round table of entrepreneurs duking this out, right? And debating back and forth, whether or not we should create our businesses to be name centric or create the business to be agnostic as to personal identity and to be more of its own living brand that is not connected to a specific person. I read a great book. It's actually a book I recommend to anybody. It's an oldie but goodie. It's called Selling the Invisible by Harry Beckwith. I'm sure it's available everywhere, Amazon, any Barnes and Noble. Probably the brick and mortar's not around, but you can order it online from them. And it is they have a chapter just debating whether or not to name your business after yourself or not. And there are great arguments to do it. And there are great arguments like the ones you mentioned where it's not optimal. But one of the arguments to do it is that even if it's a name and it belongs to one person, it can convert into a brand that is independent of the persona. And I'll give you some examples. For example, big national realty brokerage called Keller Williams. Everyone's now heard of Keller Williams, but originally it was just people's names. Other PF Chang's, I don't know if you've ever been to that restaurant. Absolutely. It's named after, the chef who originated the whole concept and the cuisine. PF Chang doesn't actually have to be at all the locations and maybe is no longer at any of them. But the name lives on, and it's kind of been converted from a person into the restaurant. I think when people who've never met PF Chang see the restaurant or hear the name, they're thinking of it almost like you think of a Nike brand or something that is independent of a human being that it's attached to. So, what do you think about that? Were there any reasons where you would want to keep your name on just a segment of your business? What are other people saying and talking about when you consult with folks? Do you counsel them on what to name their business, or by the time they come to you, have they already nailed their business name and they're just looking at you for growth?
Yeah. So typically they've already landed on a business name if they're talking to us. We're definitely not. We're kind of putting together two different things. So I love helping the solopreneur community. We offer office hours every Monday at like 12 o'clock Eastern time for Anybody can come in, ask whatever question you want, and I will give you my absolute best answer possible. Not supposed to be a self-plug, but by the time they're actually hiring my company, they're not worried about a name. And names are something that everybody struggles with, like finding the right name. Like I wasn't even in love with the original name of Barron Media Group, but I knew I needed something that wasn't like, oh, this guy Harrison. Like I wanted it to become something where somebody was like, oh, I need to hire this company and have them work on it. The reason why I did the name change was more for the ability to sell it down the road. And there's definitely the exception to the rule with Keller Williams, PF Chang's and things like that. But the catch is those companies become so big that the name doesn't particularly matter after a while. I thoroughly agree with that. But there's the vast majority of, especially marketing companies and things like that. If you ever want to sell it, selling it with your name attached to it, I was actually thinking about this the other day. There are no marketing companies that are like Fortune 500, right? They might be a multi-marketing firm where they're running full-blown ads, maybe digital stuff and all that kind of stuff. But as far as like our specific niche of like inbound marketing, we'll call it, there's really no massive companies. And that's because they're typically built to be smaller. And I don't want my company to be gigantic, believe it or not. There's a lot of companies out there that might only have 10 or 20 employees that do millions of dollars in business per year because what they do and what they produce is really high quality stuff. And that's ultimately what I'm striving for, is to be able to have a company where we focus a substantial amount on providing a superb level of customer service and growth and things like that to a small handful of clients, as opposed to being everybody's marketing firm. And then on the flip side of things, like we know that not everybody's going to be able to afford what we do. And in an effort to help those people, like I want to see them get to that point where they either can hire us, but I wish somebody had been like, and that's why I have my own YouTube channel and stuff like that. Like, I wish somebody was like, hey, you should do this when you're growing your business. Or, hey, this is the advice that you should have taken, right? Stop spending time, energy, and effort and money on social media, because growing on social media, not that it's dead, but it's so difficult and you have to put in so much time, energy, and effort into it. And God forbid it fails, right? Like, I'll just use TikTok because that's like the new thing, right? You spend all this time, energy, and effort on TikTok for what? Because those TikToks last for a little while. But the nice part about TikTok is you can have massive growth. But some of these people put 4, 5, 6 hours into one 1-minute video. If you put 4 or 5 hours into one YouTube video, your reach would be significantly better than anything else. And if you do it right, people that are actively looking for the information you have, potential buyers, are going to come to you, as opposed to people just scrolling through your phone because you made funny content.
Yeah, no one uses TikTok as a search engine. I think we can all agree nobody is saying, hey, I want to know how to, do this and that. Let me look on TikTok and see if I can find a tutorial. Although maybe if it's a dance move, but not necessarily what every entrepreneur is offering. I agree TikTok is an interesting new app to look at. When you mention investing so much time in a social media channel, I think we also have to remember some social media apps sort of die out. Like, I really don't hear much about Periscope. I think it's, maybe still going strong. You tell me, because you are much more in that field, but I don't hear about it anymore.
Stuff like that dies. But guess who doesn't die? YouTube and Google. Even Facebook, the vast majority of business owners, I would say, know that Facebook is dead, right? Like, it is so hard to grow on Facebook now. It's kind of absurd, but Facebook does have the best group option available. Even LinkedIn, like I have a whole course on LinkedIn. And even now at this point, I'm almost like, LinkedIn's kind of dead because it's just being overran by automation, which stinks for the majority of people out there, because it's like, it's such a great platform. And now nobody could really use it because people just develop, and I'm not blaming people for this, but there's these programs out there that run your automation. And at the same time, it's like, well, why wouldn't you run automation, right? You'd be silly to be a business owner without automation, because then you could make connections while you sleep. But on the flip side of things, it ruins the entire network. So there's so many plus and minuses out there. But once again, social media dies, right? I have a post on LinkedIn that got 25,000 views. After 3 days, I haven't gotten a single view on it. Guess how much money I made on it? 0. And I could tie all of my income back to different blog posts because somebody was actively searching for a solution to a problem, and I was the one that answered it. And when they realized that they couldn't do it themselves, they called us, and that's where the money is.
And it's great when you say that YouTube and Google aren't going to die and they're going to be around. They're perennials. What's interesting is YouTube is Google. Google is YouTube,
Yep.
right? So yeah, and they kind of shake hands and help each other out. So Google will rank your YouTube videos within its search results because they play well together, because they're related.
Yep.
It's very incestuous between them as companies. So yeah, no, this is great. And talking about different social media apps and different platforms, what do you, who's an expert in all of this, think about the newcomer, the new kid on the block, Clubhouse?
Oh, it's funny you mentioned this. I just made an entire YouTube video about this not that long ago. So I'll give like the abbreviated version of my whole video because I actually go pretty in depth on this. So I love Clubhouse. Honestly, it is like crack. In total honesty, it's easily my favorite app. I love consuming. And the nice part is I can listen while I walk my dog. I can listen while I'm hanging out with friends. I can do all of these activities without the need for looking at my phone. So I could listen to Clubhouse while I drive. I could listen to Clubhouse while I cook. I could listen to Clubhouse while I'm walking the dog. I could listen to Clubhouse while I'm, well, maybe not while I'm vacuuming, but like that's the beauty of it, right? And so I had spent about 10 hours or so in Clubhouse and I'm like, well, this is hard. Like why I want to start a room. And I probably started like a dozen or so rooms and I'm like, nobody's coming into my rooms. And I'm trying to like literally just help people that have questions, right? And I'm like, well, this kind of stinks, right? Put all this time, energy, and effort into a social media app, right? And you're not getting the results you want. Coincidence? I think not. But the crazy part is like I'm working so hard on it, and I'm like I'm really just trying to give like the best answers to things like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm done. I'm never going back on it again. I spent 10 hours on it. That's 10 hours of my life. I will never get back. And the other problem that I have with it is like podcasting is a major competitor to that. The beautiful part about podcasting is you have pause and you have rewind and you can go browse to a podcast and something like that. So if I wanted to listen to a podcast from Joe Rogan and learn about sulforaphane chemicals and things like that, I can go do that. If I want to go follow Find My Fitness or I want to go follow Freakonomics, like there's all this really good information. And the cool part is they're typically laid out in a chronological order. But on Clubhouse is like you're jumping in the middle of a conversation unless you spend hours and hours and hours in there. I think the big pull for Clubhouse was a lot of people were like, well, all these really famous people are in there and they can give you really good advice. Yeah, you're right. But guess where that advice also is? In ebooks, right? Or audiobooks. And it's on their YouTube channels, right? Like successful people are not greedy. They want to share the information, right? Like I consider myself at this point successful and I have a whole YouTube channel dedicated to helping small business owners, right? And growing their business and things like that. So my gripe with Clubhouse was I got off of it and there was a girl on Facebook, on one of my Facebook groups in like a sales group. And she's like, I made $134,000 on Clubhouse in the last 2 weeks. This is why you need to be on it. And she wrote this whole article about like what she did and how it all worked and really the whole soup to nuts. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go back on it, right? Came in with a different strategy, fixed up my profile, made a bunch of great connection. And at the end of the day, I spent another 15 or 20 hours on there. And I probably spoke to 400 people in that last 10 or 15 hours of me being on there. But this is where I really was like, this is great, but this also stinks because now I'm spending time, energy, and effort on this platform and I'm not getting any sales. If I took that same 10 or 15 hours and dumped it back into YouTube, my reach and my views would be exponentially longer. And once again, that will work for me for the next several years down the road. So I don't have to worry about, is it great? Yeah. Can you connect with a lot of people? Could you potentially do business with a lot of people? Absolutely. But I would much rather spend that 25 hours on writing. And I know that not everybody's going to want to write or make content because everybody wants the easy route, right? But that's not what makes money, is the easy route. But taking that time, energy, and effort and dumping it into content that's going to work for me forever is so much more valuable than social media apps. And at this point, I'm not even on most social media apps. And if I am, I rarely use them for that exact reason, is because once you're done using it, it's over, right? And my absolute gripe with Clubhouse, I know this is a super long-winded answer, is you could have just missed the cure for cancer right before you got on, or like the best business advice right before you got on. And there's no way to go back and like either listen to it again or record it or anything like that. And I can't stand that.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why people like it, is because it's addictive. They're like, well, FOMO, I can't leave the room. What if, the next person said something that will change my life? And I think it is actually becoming a little addictive. My personal opinion on why Clubhouse has become so popular is actually a little bit maybe funny, but I think people are lonely because of COVID. So they want to socialize more, but they're also at home eating Cheetos in their PJs with hair unbrushed. And so this is a way to socialize and network and just show your one best picture as your profile pic. And you can just kind of sit around in your PJs or yoga pants or whatever and have kind of the equivalent of hanging out in a bar, just talking to a bunch of people that share a common interest. So it's like being part of truly a club, because you can pick the rooms based on the topics and what you want to do that night. I've noticed that when I log into that app and it's kind of evening hours, they seem to be a lot of people hanging out after work and actually using up their free time. And we talk a lot about work-life balance here on the podcast. So for a lot of people, I think they consider Clubhouse not work. And it really is just a way to socialize and recreation. I can tell you're not 100% won over. I'm not yet either. I did start a club titled the same as this podcast. So it's Lifestyle Solopreneurs, and it is a club within Clubhouse. But like you said, we had a fantastic room once under the club, and it was how to hire and delegate and build a team and hire a VA. And we had an amazing conversation. We went all into virtual receptionists, pros and cons. We had people speaking that had used virtual receptionists, others that bypassed that completely, just have everything go to voicemail, get transcribed. And at the end of that whole conversation, it was gone. There was no, unless we had recorded it, transcribed it, or, taken a step further beyond the app's functions, it's gone. Just like an in-person real conversation. Maybe that's part of what people like about it. They feel they can say something and it won't be recorded for posterity, and they can maybe take more risks, more chances. But on the other hand, I see what you're saying. If you take that same amount of effort and time and go onto a platform like YouTube, that's evergreen. It's there forever. I mean, once you post that video, unless you take it down, it's there and people can find it. And like you said, it's searchable too. I can't search Clubhouse to see who's talking about a specific thing. The way it is right now, it's not even easy to search at all. Let's say I joined, I'm like, hey, I want to find a small room that right now is talking about, I don't know, COVID lockdown. You can't really narrow it down to find that exact room to walk into. So it is kind of like being at a networking event where you wander around the room and maybe pick up snippets of conversation and kind of walk over to a group. The thing that is a little bit better than in-person networking is you can just leave a group without it being this awkward social moment where you're like, okay, guys, this isn't at all what I thought it would be. Bye-bye. In Clubhouse, you really can just click a button and you're out of there. There's no explanation, no goodbye, no awkwardness. You can just step out. So in that way, I think it's better than in person.
Yeah, I agree. Look, I'm not knocking anybody for spending a lot of time on Clubhouse. I totally understand how unbelievably addicting that platform is. And I do love it. But right, this is the Solopreneur podcast. You're here, if you're listening to this, you're here to make money. Unless you want to just not make money, and look, that's not going to knock you. It's your choice. But I would much rather see people invest their time in things that are going to really grow their business and not just that veneer or the golden age type stuff where people are like, oh, well, I spent all this time on networking. Well, networking is great, but if you're not networking with the right people, networking doesn't mean anything. And people get really upset when I talk about these super sensitive things because they're like, well, you don't get it, right? I'm like, no, I networked a lot and I refuse to join a networking group because networking groups, as great as they are super ineffective for 90% of people. Now, I'll be the first one to admit, yeah, I've gotten business out of networking groups for sure. But if I took all the time that I spent in networking groups at BNI's or Le Tips, at 7 a.m. breakfasts, if you really think about it, a networking group is 3 hours every single week. If you spend 3 hours every single week building your business and actually creating content, think about it. 3 hours. I could write one really good blog post, or I could probably bang out 2 or 1 really good YouTube videos. You're going to go meet with potentially 20 to 30, if you're in a really big networking group, 50 people. But if you make that one video, if I just skip over to my YouTube channel really quick, and I'm going to use real-time examples, most of my videos that have been out for a little while, and out meaning they've been out for a month or two, they're getting, and look, I'm a small channel, I have no problem saying it, they're getting 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 views, but they're working for me and they're compounding week after week, month after month, and things like that. That is the value of it. So if you spent that time on different things, my Clubhouse video, 23 views, right? I just spoke to an entire room of people that were in a BNI group, and I spent 3 hours on a video, and that video will be searchable forever. That's the value of it.
It's time for everyone to look in the mirror. How much of your time that you spend what you consider marketing, are we just hanging out at a BNI or Latip instead of doing what Harrison tells us to do, which is build your content that lives forever? Build the kind of content that is out there today, next week, a year from now, 5 years from now, easily accessible by people looking for the information that you can provide, right? So look in the mirror. Let's all think to ourselves, what can I do and how can I do better to create that kind of content rather than the kind of content that, like on Clubhouse, disappears the minute it's out of your mouth and only reaches the people that are in that room at the same moment. And one thing I have about Latips and BNIs and those kinds of networking groups that maybe I find kind of borderline unethical is you don't really know the quality of the other people that are in your randomly sort of assigned group of people, but you're responsible now for helping drive customers and referrals to the people that happen to be in your group, whether or not you're familiar with their service, their quality, any of that. It's very much, I've sat in one. I mean, everyone at some point when you're an entrepreneur gets invited to go and check one out. And I remember sitting there and it was very structured. And it was like everybody put on a note card the referrals that you are sending to other people in this group, and you pass the cards around the circle. You might know which one of those groups that is. And, maybe let's not call them out. But I just remember thinking, whoa, I barely know you folks. If I joined this organization, I'm supposed to just start referring all of you for whatever service you provide to everyone that I know. Sorry, but I actually put my stamp of approval when I give a referral. And that means something to me and to my friends and colleagues, associates. I'm not going to refer someone unless I either have used their service personally or am familiar with them in some other way, more than just we happen to attend the same breakfast every Thursday.
I agree 1,000%. And look, they do a bit of due diligence, right? Like they don't just let, at least with Latip and BNI, and I have no problem calling them out because I've been members of both of them. There is a due diligence, right? Like somebody has to go, they build what's called an or they may do what's called an inspection where they go check out to see if it's real and things like that. And they look at your website and customer reviews. And like, there is a bit of due diligence on that kind of thing. But like, the crazy part is it's like, yes, I thoroughly agree. You don't know any of these people, right? And you're all of a sudden expected to give referrals out. But on the flip side of things, and I've gotten business from Latip and BNI and things like that, but there's two things to look at. You're talking about time, which is easily the most valuable resource that you have. I'm very protective of my time, especially now more than ever as we're really starting to grow. But two, you're talking about money. Like BNI and Latip are $1,000 per year. What could you do with $1,000 to grow your business? And I guarantee you, if the worst people in the world at Facebook ads can reach more than 1,000 people with, or better yet, more than 25 or 50 people with $1,000. And it never really occurred to me, even though I was in digital marketing, it was like, well, this is what you're supposed to do. And this is what you're supposed to do. And I followed that and I kicked myself in the butt because I'm like, I just gave up a year of my life. Granted, some accounts I did get from Latip and BNI, but if I invested that time in so many other areas and money in so many other areas, my company would be exponentially larger, right? And for somebody that's thinking, well, how does $1,000 really grow your business? It's not the $1,000 that grew my business. It's the 3 hours times 52 weeks a year. Plus you have to get together mandatorily for these things. There's always networking groups. And on top of that, you're counting driving, gas, fuel, and all that other stuff that goes into that whole thing. That's where the strain is. On top of that, I don't perform well in the morning. So it's just, and I'm not saying this is the case for everybody. Like there's definitely plenty of options for people out there. But for most people that like really want to grow their business, Latip and BNI, yeah, it's great for immediate stuff, but don't think that like that's all you need to do for your business. If you want serious business growth, you have to do way more stuff than just that.
I love that you know yourself, that you're not a morning person. I think people who know themselves do better in life because they actually structure their life around their own strengths and needs and all of that, which is great. So some people are night owls, some people are morning people. And if you know that about yourself, you should use that to structure your days, right? And be most effective. And yeah, let's not knock poor Latip, BNI. I mean, there's some good there, but I agree with everything you just said. And no, really. And when you said there's even the person who's the absolute worst in the world at Facebook ads, taking $1,000 can get some great results with $1,000 worth of ads and the number of eyeballs and views and clicks that would generate. Well, first of all, if anyone else out there laughed like I did internally when Harrison said that, I totally pictured some poor person at a keyboard holding up their hand saying, I am the worst person in the world at Facebook ads. But they're still clicking away. And, you can do something with that kind of ad budget for sure. So
you could do a lot with $1,000. Like,
yeah.
Ads, yeah. No way. Like you could go buy content. You could go hire writers. You can go hire a video editor to edit your videos. If you can go make videos, like there's so much more that you could do to grow your business in that period of time. But look, to each his own. If you want to go do that, I'm not knocking it, like I said. And it's great for building structure and meeting people in the community, in that community and stuff like that. But there are way better options out there to invest time and energy and money into.
Well, this has been such a great conversation. I know there's people who probably want to attend the office hours that you mentioned because you said, hey, I have office hours. So tell us about the office hours and other ways that people can connect with you.
Yeah. So I spend it, I try to spend it at least an hour a week giving back. Their office hours are Monday at 12 o'clock Eastern time. I may swap it up. So there's like a 1 week, a weekend and like a week office hours, depending on what people can and can't attend. But yeah, it's just like my way of like giving back, because when I first started my business, I started out in social media. Like I was like, oh, I could help people grow their social medias. And then I was like, whoa, this is a lot of work. And on top of that, it was just brick wall after brick wall, because running somebody's social media is great. But when you're getting clicks on social media to somebody's website and their website's awful, now you have to fix that problem, right? So we ended up building websites for people. And then I was like, well, people are getting these websites, but they're not getting found on Google, right? And then I had this like kind of epiphany where I'm like, oh my God, there's so much out there that people need to really invest time and energy and effort and money into, and they're not doing it. So we ended up stumbling into like inbound marketing, creating content and stuff like that, because it works all the time. So the year and a half to 2 years that I've spent nose to the grindstone, spending every waking hour of the day. And even still, I probably study way more than most of my competitors ever will in this kind of stuff. Like, I just want to help people accelerate their learning, make better choices in their business, and avoid the massive pitfalls that I took when I first started. And thankfully, I learned very early on about a lot of my pitfalls and like what was good and what was bad and things like that. Because if I didn't, oh my God, I would still be doing the same thing that everybody thinks works and it doesn't work.
Well, Harrison, it's been great to have you on. What is the best website for people to go to connect or to get the access link and figure out how to meet you for those office hours?
Yeah, so we're going to be putting up a page pretty soon. I don't know when this is officially going live, but it's growth-generators or growth-generators.com. I've learned that some people don't know what a hyphen is. And then go up there, check out what we do, how we help people and stuff like that. We're constantly putting up new content on our YouTube channel, on the blog, on different ways to grow your business and how to grow your business and things like that. And then office hours, I'll make a whole new page up there. Just, if you want to jump in office hours, 12 o'clock Eastern time. And then if you want to check out what I'm working on personally, it's the Millennial Entrepreneur Harrison Barron on YouTube and harrisonbarron.com online.
Awesome. Well, Harrison, it's been great to have you on. So everyone go check out growth-generators.com or growth-generators.com. What's kind of funny is there's a lot of folks today who don't know that the number sign that now is a hash mark is actually pound.
Yep.
So that's how we date ourselves. If you're someone that knows that it's also can be called pound, a pound sign, then you're officially old like me, right? So so that's where you want to go, growth-generators.com to connect with Harrison. Harrison, thank you so much for being on the podcast. It has been fantastic having you on.
Hey, thanks for having me on. I had a blast. This is something that made me really kind of use some brain cells. So I'm super passionate about this kind of stuff. I don't know if you could tell, but I really do love it. I love helping other people and growing businesses.
Can't wait to connect again.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to this podcast, and if you leave a review on iTunes, I promise I will read every single review. If you know someone who makes a full-time living from part-time work, and maybe this is you, please visit lifestylesolopreneur.com to nominate a guest or to nominate yourself. Because remember this, money doesn't buy happiness. But money in the hands of a happy person, there is no greater tool.
Today's episode was brought to you by the Get Shift Done program. It's a lifestyle-changing online class to help you define your business and lifestyle ambitions and to set goals in a way you've never experienced before. This class will 10x your daily productivity with methods that will blow your mind. And if you use a coupon code podcast, the class tuition is 99% off. Visit GetShiftDone.com to enroll today.